I'm Amy.
I'm Laura.
And we are TwoPaperGirls.
Today we're going to do the classics book tag. We weren't tagged by anyone, but we saw this over on Jean's channel at Bookish Thoughts, and we just thought it was nice to give us a chance to talk about some uni books and different things we don't normally talk about as much.
And we haven't talked about classics for quite a while now because we've been finished uni for like 2 months, I think. So it'd be nice to just refresh our memories of some classics so we don't forget our course completely.
There's quite a lot of questions, so let's just get straight into it. Question 1 is an overhyped classic that you really didn't like.
My first answer might be a little bit controversial. I read To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee a couple of years ago and I was quite young, so I'm definitely going to reread it again to try and change my opinion because I'm aware how not good this opinion is. I really don't like this book. I don't like the story. I don't like the characters. I don't like the accent it's written in. It just really annoyed me. And I know the hype to go set a Watchmen is so high at the minute, and this is probably really unpopular. Like, not even funny unpopular. People are just going to hate me for this. But I'm going to try and reread it and change my opinion, because I don't want to hate it, but I do.
A book I really don't like is Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. I read this for university this past year. I just really didn't like it. I liked it to begin with. I thought it was interesting. The writing was good. It was just so long and miserable. It's just literally like 400 pages of the most depressing. It was just so depressing and miserable. Like, nothing happy happened in the entire book, and I really did not enjoy it. I would not want to watch a film of it. I wouldn't want to reread it because it's just miserable. Like, I don't always mind miserable books. I liked Catcher in the Rye, but this was just a new level of miserable.
Question 2 is your favourite time period to read about.
My favourite time period to read about is the Romantic period, because there was a lot of things going on. There was the start of the sort of Industrial Revolution, there was a lot of change in jobs and slavery, and there was just a lot going on at this time, and I find it interesting to read like Frankenstein or William Wordsworth poetry, just to get an insight into how all those changes in the way people lived affected them at the time. And yeah, I just really enjoy reading books set and were written in the Romantic period.
This is quite an obvious one, but my favourite time period to read about is the 1920s, the Roaring Twenties. Great Gatsby is so good, and I can't really think of other books that are actually set in the 1920s, like specifically. All the other S. Scott Fitzgerald books are, and also all of Virginia Woolf's books are set around about the 1920s as well, like The Waves and To the Lighthouse, and I think Mrs. Dalloway as well, but you'll see that later. And I just love the 1920s so much. It's just all sparkly and glamorous, but not so glamorous if you've read The Great Gatsby.
Question 3 is your favourite fairy tale.
I love Beauty and the Beast. I just love it so much. Belle is me. She loves reading, and well, she can speak French and I can't. But her best friends in the castle are like a candle and a clock, and they're really cute, and I'm so excited for Emma Watson to be Belle in the new remake. It's just going to be the best thing.
When I was trying to think of an answer for this, I realised I don't really like that many fairy tales. I definitely haven't really read many. I like reworkings of fairy tales, but not the actual original. So I'm going to cheat and say Tales of the Beadle and the Bard by J.K. Rowling. It's imaginary, magician, wizardy fairy tales, but the actual tale of the three brothers is really, really clever. It could be a fairy tale. It's just really clever with the cloak and the wand and how they try and defeat death. It's a bit like the Pardoner's Tale by Chaucer. It's quite similar, but that's not a fairy tale. But yeah, I think that has to be my favourite fairy tale, even though it doesn't really count.
Question 4 is a classic that you're most embarrassed that you haven't read yet.
Mine isn't just a specific book, it's just an author in general, and that is Charles Dickens. Specifically Great Expectations, because that's his most famous book, but just any of them. I haven't read any Charles Dickens, and my experience with Victorian literature, I don't particularly want to, but I feel like I should. I will read Charles Dickens at some point in my life, but I haven't at the minute, and I probably won't at university either, because the modules I'm picking aren't really geared towards Victorian times. But yeah, I haven't read any Dickens books ever, and it's quite embarrassing.
I'm embarrassed about not having read Catch-22 by Joseph Heller yet. I've had it on my shelves for God knows how long, so long, and I tried to read it, but I just couldn't get into it, and I put it down. It's quite a big classic, and it's set in the war, and back then I wasn't really interested. I was quite young to read about war, and planes. But I really want to get into this because like one of my friends has like this is his favourite book, and I'm just excited to get into it if I ever feel like the mood come over me.
Question 5 is the top 5 classics you want to read soon-ish.
Coming in at 5 is Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. I've got to read this at uni next year, I think, so it'd be good to get to soon. I also want to get around to reading Hard Times by Charles Dickens because I had the first paragraph. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It's my background on my phone for ages and I love that quote, and I tried to read it but I couldn't get into this one either. But I think this would be a good one to get round to. And then we've got Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. I loved The Lighthouse and I'm becoming a bit of a Woolf fan, and I haven't read this one. This is like one of the famous ones and it's just really tiny, so I want to get round to this. I want to get round to reading Othello because I've actually watched the play when it was on the BBC once and I thought, oh, that's really, really good. And I want to get round to actually reading it and like do a bit of analysis maybe. And the last book I want to get round to reading as a classic pretty soon is Brideshead Revisited by Evelyn I don't know how to pronounce I want to read this because our A-level teacher, Roberta, she was like the best teacher ever, and this was her favourite classic, and I don't know if it still is, but I hope it still is.
The 5 classics I want to get round to is King Lear by Shakespeare. I do have King Lear at home, but I don't have it here with me at the minute. But yeah, I love me some Shakespeare, and King Lear is one of the most famous tragedies, and I think I would really enjoy it. And as I mentioned in our July TBR, I think I really want to read Dracula because I just went to Whitby where it's set, and I've just heard lots of good things about Dracula. I also want to read The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson because I just hear about this one all the time. I've always found the premise of it really interesting, and I don't know why I've never picked it up because it's so small, but I will hopefully get around to this soon. Also, I want to read The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde because again, the premise has always intrigued me. I have my own copy at home. I've never picked it up because YA always calls my name before classics does. And the last book I want to read is pretty much anything by H.G. Wells, but specifically War of the Worlds because I did start it and I really enjoyed it, but I just put it down for some reason. I think I just got busy with A-levels at the time, never picked it back up, but the writing was great, so I need to get around to some H.G. Wells.
Question 6 is a favourite book or series based on a classic.
I read this question initially as a favourite like modern take on a classic, so I was going to say the Sherlock TV programme. I didn't realise it was talking about books. So I don't really have an answer for this because I don't know any books that are based off classics. I know there is a lot, but none of them are springing to mind at the minute.
Dinosaurs are classic.
Question 7 is your favourite movie or TV series based on a classic.
I love Merlin. This was originally from Morte d'Arthur by Thomas Malory. He wrote all about Arthur and Merlin and all the Knights of the Round Table, and I just love that series so much with Colin Morgan.
I adore Merlin as well, but I think Sherlock is definitely my favourite modern take on the original Sherlock Holmes series because I've never been a massive fan of other Sherlock sort of classic adaptations, but I love this modern twist so much. Just Benedict Cumberbatch and Andrew Scott are just my bays, and I just love Sherlock so much.
Question 8 is the worst classic to movie adaptation.
I'm going to have to say Jane Eyre featuring Michael Fassbender because I watched this for revision and I really enjoyed reading Jane Eyre, and watching the film they left out so much important stuff. You didn't really get an essence of any of the characters. I mean, I know it's a long book and maybe it works better in a TV series or something, but as the film went, I just really didn't like it.
Next worst movie that I haven't actually seen it, and neither's Laura, but we know it's awful. Frankenstein, after Frankenstein, it just does it all wrong. Just all wrong.
Yeah.
I don't want to see it. I just know it's just awful and wrong, and I hate it when they take a classic and just butcher it in something really strange.
And it's also doing the whole Frankenstein is the monster, not the creator thing, and he just kills demons and it looks so bad. Question 9 is what is your favourite editions of classics that you want to collect more of?
I really like these vintage ones. They're lovely in red and they're all black and they just got simple covers, and I really like these. I don't really mind about covers much, but I have a collection of these here on my shelf and it'd be nice to have some more just to fill it up.
I don't have any with me, but I really love the Penguin Classics Library one. They have really simple minimalist covers and nice orange spines, and I just think they're really gorgeous. They tend to only be about £5 as well, and they're made of this lovely soft material, and I'm definitely collecting those.
Question 10 is an underhyped classic that you'd want to recommend to everyone.
This was quite difficult because it's underhyped depending who you're talking to. So mine is underhyped sort of in general. It's not a classic that everyone in the world has heard of, but if you're at uni, you probably have. That is Wide Sargasso Sea by Jean Rhys. I really, really enjoyed this. It's one of my favourite books I studied at uni, and I feel I know people have heard of it, but not compared to Great Expectations, Pride and Prejudice. It hasn't got that sort of fame everywhere, and I think it's a very accessible classic to read because it's quite modern writing, it's got an interesting story, and yeah, this is just a really, really great classic to pick up.
I would recommend Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman. I read this just after I read Paper Towns, and I love poetry, and I just wanted to read something that John Green loved. And so if you've read Paper Towns, you probably know a lot about this, but I don't think he's like completely hyped as a poet because it's quite old and the poems are quite hard to read and they're long, but they're really enjoyable and they've got a lot of meaning behind them, so I think it's really good poetry.
So that's it for the classics book tag. We're not going to tag anyone because a lot of booktubers we enjoy don't really mention classics. We don't want to tag someone who doesn't read as many classics as we do, because being an English student you kind of have to.
So if you do want to do this classics tag, consider yourself tagged, and we'd love to see your videos if you want to put them down below if you've done them. We hope you enjoyed this video and we'll see you on the next one. Bye!